One of the biggest mistakes many people make, and it's one I saw frequently while doing a mass catch up on Family History Fanatics comment section, is expecting DNA results to tell you everything you need to know. People see an unexpected ethnicity in their result or don't understand how a percentage ended up in their profile. Some assume the test is wrong, and others think they've been lied to about their ancestry. I've lost count how many times I've seen comments from people panicking over that unexpected ethnicity or missing percentage. Today, we're going to talk about how to handle this situation. DNA won't lie, but it won't tell you everything. Here's the reality. DNA tests don't tell the whole story. They can only analyze the reference populations available compared to your DNA test. And those databases aren't always as comprehensive as we would like. But more often than not, the real issue is that the test taker simply doesn't know enough about their own family history to interpret the results correctly. Sometimes that's because of the small reference populations in that database. But other times it's because you don't understand what the results are telling you. And then if they change, heaven forbid. If you don't know where your ancestors lived, who they married, or how your family migrated, how can you expect to recognize the story your DNA is telling? DNA test takers should not be spending their hard-earned dollars just for an ethnicity breakdown that may or may not be accurate. Instead, take a test to understand your genealogy. And don't make the mistake of thinking a DNA test is a magic tree planter that will build your family history for you. DNA only gives you clues. It's up to you to put the puzzle together. If you're relying only on DNA, you're missing critical details. DNA can point you to relatives, but it won't tell you how they're related. If you don't combine DNA results with solid genealogical research, you're just guessing, and guessing isn't fact. On the other hand, if you rely only on paper records, you're trusting that every document is accurate. Newsflash, people lied, names changed, babies were adopted. Without DNA to confirm your paper trail, you might be climbing the wrong tree altogether. And if you have a paper trail-based family tree and you do validate it with genetic genealogy, if you're not sharing both of those together, then the adoptees who are struggling to even get clues for their paper trail family tree, they're not going to be successful. You need to use paper trail research as well as genetic genealogy tree building techniques to truly understand your heritage. Once again, DNA matches don't lie, but they don't tell the whole truth. Let's say you share 865 centimorgans with an unknown genetic relative. That's a solid chunk of DNA. Enough to tell you this person is probably, based on age, a great aunt or uncle, or maybe a half aunt, half uncle. But here's the problem. DNA alone may help you identify which side of the family a match belongs to, maternal or paternal, and in some cases, even whether the common ancestor was female or male. But it can struggle when it comes to distinguishing between siblings or pinpointing the exact ancestor in the line that is your common ancestor. More importantly, DNA can't tell you the names of that common ancestor. That's kind of what you are after. Who? Not that they exist. I mean, you knew that they exist. You didn't have to have a DNA test to tell you that. But you want their names so you can figure out more about them. And that's where genealogy steps in to connect the dots and name the names. Genealogy research fills in the missing details by linking records, family trees, and historical context to your DNA results. If you want to know your heritage, you've got to do both DNA matching and paper trail research. But how? Well, first, vital records are helpful, and they provide critical information. Birth, marriage, and death records, these help place individuals in specific times and locations, but they also establish relationships, helping you determine exactly where your DNA match fits in the family tree. Once you've exhausted that, or if they aren't available, then you want to start looking at census records and maybe even some land records to establish relationships. If DNA suggests a connecting, land records and census records help you figure out groups of people that are likely family. Now, city directories. Andy and I use city directories to solve the mystery of who my granny's biological father is. We narrowed down the options to 3 brothers. Remember, DNA wasn't helpful in differentiating which brother was the biological father. But using city directories, we found the addresses of the 3 brothers at the time and place where the biological mother, who we had identified, lived. When we found out that Delbert Hankinson not only worked for the same railroad as Agnes Anderson, but lived within walking distance of her home, while the other brothers lived on the opposite side of town, or not even in the same town, we had the name of the brother who sired my grandmother. Newspapers are awesome. They're one of my favorite resources, and I talk about it frequently on this channel. Now, while the class I'm about to tell you about didn't specifically talk about figuring out DNA matches using newspapers, the class Using Newspapers to Break Down Brick Walls and Add Details to Your Tree by Jenny Joyce during Roots Tech 2025 explains how newspapers can give you the details for your family tree, thereby connecting that to DNA research, but names to the matches in common. So there you have it, 5 records that you may need to access in order to build your family tree to better understand your DNA matches. I want to tap in on those unexpected parental events, like discovering through DNA that your father or grandfather wasn't who you thought. DNA can give you clues, but again, paper trail research is what confirms the truth. I have to stress that what we've discovered in the past 10 years of genetic genealogy is non-parental events, sometimes called NPEs, happen more often than people expect. And when DNA drops a surprise, you need genealogy to make sense of it. DNA will suggest close relatives, but it won't tell you which brother, cousin, or distant uncle was the father. To figure that out, you need to track records and birth certificates and so forth. And sometimes it's not the direct family tree that you're linking into. It's the matches family tree that then give you the clues. Okay, here's what's happening. If your DNA results don't match your family tree, it's time to roll up your sleeves and start digging into the records that will tell you who your ancestor really is. And if you want to hear an experience of a non-paternal event case that changed the family tree a couple of times, I'll link to the video about Larry, who is a YouTuber, and he talks about DNA, and he talked about how his DNA upended who he thought he was. DNA tests can give you an idea of your ancestral origins, and it's promoted heavily in just about every DNA test out there. But those percentages in your ethnicity report are just estimates. And when you understand estimates, then you're going to understand that these are just clues. There are lots of reasons why the estimates are low or even wrong. They're based on reference populations, groups of people whose DNA has been sampled to represent certain regions. The problem is reference populations vary between testing companies, and some regions are underrepresented. If you're asking about Native American DNA and why the U.S. Native American DNA is not showing up in your results when you thought you had Cherokee ancestors, there's a link in the description box that you desperately need to watch. Your DNA results may not always reflect what you expected, and this is why I want to stress everyone who's taken a DNA test for ethnicity results, please start using genealogical records, because that is where the historical heritage context comes from. If you want to know your heritage, eventually leave the ethnicity reports. Why? Here's an example. If your DNA test shows you have 10% Scandinavian ancestry, but you can't find a single Scandinavian ancestor in the family tree, that 10% could be due to ancient migrations, reference population limitations, or statistical errors. But if you trace your tree and find you had a great-great-grandfather who immigrated from Norway in the 1800s, you now have solid proof of that Scandinavian ancestry. The bottom line, DNA ethnicity results are clues, not conclusions. If you want to truly understand your heritage, you need to build your family tree and dig into historical records. And that's where the real answers are. I've said this several times about links in the description box. Our channel is packed with tutorials to teach you how to climb your family tree and make sense of your DNA results. Whether you're struggling to identify an unknown ancestor, figure out a DNA match, or break through a brick wall, we likely have a video for you. If you're not sure where to start, drop a comment below and tell me where you're struggling. Is it a DNA question about how to do research, or is it a genealogical question? I'll help you find the next right video, or you might trigger the next video for me to make. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and then go build your family tree with both DNA and paper trail research as much as possible.